honor and respects. This is Sancista Brujo Luis. I'm doing a video today because I was just on Facebook. You know, today's a quiet day here in New England. Pretty much have no clients. But I was in Facebook today and I had read a post by Candelo Kimbisa. And first of all, let me explain who Candelo Kimbisa is. Candelo Kimbisa is the host of Candelo's Corner, and I have been interviewed by him twice. He's a friend of mine on Facebook, and I have nothing but respect for him. He is a Tata, and I think he is also a Yawo, or is in Yaworaje in Ocha. He is a Puerto Rican. He's Puerto Riqueño and of Dominican descent. So he had posted something on Facebook today on the Puerto Rican and the Dominican influences in hoodoo. And, well, I wanted to, you know, just touch base on that because I did comment on his page, and I try to do as much as respectful as I can. But, a lot of people might take things out of hand of how you say things in Facebook when you don't mean it in any way to offend anybody. You just want to make sure you educate people. So I did leave a comment, and I'm actually going to leave a comment down below of exactly what I wrote on, hoodoo and how it is known in Spanish-speaking countries. Hoodoo in Spanish-speaking countries is known as Gafancia. And Gafancia is not a religion. It's not a spiritual tradition. It is just an act. It's like making a pot of rice and beans. It's like mopping the floor. It's like doing a jinx on somebody. The word Gafe or Gafancia means to throw a jinx on somebody, to maldecir, either to maldecir, to dar una bendición, which is a blessing. And what's interesting about the word Gafancia and Gafe is that they both have an origin with the hoodoo word. I think it's called goofer, okay, like in goofered dust. Both those words, goofer is the way they say it in English, and Gafe is the way we say it in Spanish. Both those words have origins in the Congo, region of Africa, and was brought down and to the New World. So before I do go on to explaining the similarities between hoodoo as practiced in the southern states of the United States and Hispanic brujeria or Hispanic gafancia, there's a lot of similarities, a lot of roots, okay, because just like gafancia or brujeria in Hispanic countries, which has influences with Africa, with the Native American traditions and with traditions brought from Europe, it's the same thing as in Southern American hoodoo. But before I go on to the word Gafe, I want to say that Candelo, I did mention Candelo Kimbisa. I had done I think 2 interviews with him. I'm gonna try to find it. I think there's one on YouTube, and I'll leave a link to that interview that I had with Candelo Kimbisa, and I will leave a link. I think he has a webpage. I'll leave a link to his webpage. If you're interested, go check out Candelo Kimbisa. He is what he is. It's to the point. It is what it is. So you gotta have respect for him in that sense, and so we've been friends for 2 or 3 years on Facebook. But again, I'm gonna try to look for that link on here on YouTube, and I'll place it under the video so you can go check it out. And I will leave a link. I think he has a web page. I'll leave a link to his web page, so go check that out as well. I just wanted to give out, Candelo Kimbisa his props. Now back to the word, because of the similarities between, or are there Puerto Rican and Dominican influences in Southern American hoodoo? Well, from my knowledge, Puerto Ricans and Dominican people, when we migrated or immigrated from the Dominican Republic or from the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, we migrated to big cities. So we migrated to Miami, Orlando, New York, Massachusetts, Philadelphia, Chicago, big cities. It wasn't until around, I want to say, the late 1990s, maybe early 2000s, that now Hispanics were migrating into the southern states, and I know Puerto Rican people who do live in Virginia and blah blah blah, but when I've talked to them, I noticed they don't know much about Southern American hoodoo. Because they practice what they practice. Let's say whether they're Catholics or they're Espiritistas or whatever they are. They just practice what they are, and that's their Southern American traditions, and that's just the way they practice it. So I've never heard of anyone. How do I say this? I've never heard of Latinos influencing Southern American hoodoo or Gafancia. Now, one thing I want to say to you, or to my watchers or my followers, is that in Hispanic, Gafancia or Brujeria is not a religion. It is an act. It's an act. It's something that you wake up and you make a pot of arroz con rice and beans, and you mop the floor, and then you have your enemy, and then you just fix something up. Tú le haces un gafe, you throw a jinx on that person. Le haces una brujeria. So we don't view, most traditions of brujeria are not religious in the Hispanic countries. Many people who practice gafancia or practice brujeria or whatever, they use that as a family tradition. It's more of a family tradition, just like cooking, like cleaning the house. It's something that you do it's just like tying your shoes. And many do practice religions outside of that practice. They can be Catholic, they can be Protestant, or they can be any other religion. Santeria, Cuban Santeria, maybe some practice Espiritismo. But that's kept different. That's kept apart from the Gafancia, from the hoodoo. I hope I'm making sense, because I didn't even plan this video. I just throwing it out there. So I'm gonna leave a comment to what the exact comment of what I left under Candelo Kimbisa's video down below. And again, I'm gonna leave the link to his interview if I can find it, and his webpage. So go check it out. So. The origins of the word Gafe or goofer. This is the only connection that I found that has anything to do with Southern American hoodoo and Gafancia as practice, which a lot of people don't use the word Gafancia as much anymore. They use the term more Brujeria. Brujeria is like witchcraft. But the only similarities is the root of the origin of these traditions, and how these traditions have similar roots, whether it's in the southern states of the United States or the Caribbean. So I just want to touch a little bit base, go deeper into that and touch base on the history and the origins on that. But also I'm going to leave it all down below so you can read it. In the 1400s, in the late 1400s, and in the late or in the middle or early 1500s, two of the ports where a lot of African slaves were brought was to Puerto Rico. And because Puerto Rico is the entranceway to the New World here in the Americas. It's the first island, and then you got the rest of the islands. But two of the greatest ports to import African slaves was Puerto Rico, and was what was then known as Hispaniola. Hispaniola today is known as Haiti, and the Dominican Republic. So a lot of slaves were brought there to Puerto Rico and Hispaniola, and many were kept, and then other slaves were sold out or shipped to South America, to the New World, to New Orleans, to wherever it may be. To give you one good one good historical, actually two historical references to the slaves in Puerto Rico. There was one whose name was El Negro, and El Negro Felipe. Negro Felipe was a slave. I think he was from Congo origin, and he was brought to Puerto Rico as a slave. He was brought to Puerto Rico and was there for a couple of months, and then he was sold into slavery into Venezuela, where now El Negro Felipe is venerated as an ascended, as a spirit in the Maria Leonza traditions of their Espiritismo, and he is part of La Corte Negra. He fought for the liberty of his African people in Venezuela. One case, another case, and these are all historically written. There's historical proof. Okay, this is fact. This is not me making up notions and idea. Another. In Puerto Rico, there was two cacicas during the time when Christopher Columbus came to the New World. In Puerto Rico, there was Yuisa, which was one cacica. A cacica is a female chieftain of Taino Native American origin. There was Yuisa Aldea, and there was in Haiti, Haiti or Hispaniola, there was Anacaona. Okay, two of the female chieftains, and they both, I think Anacaona strangled herself, and I think Yuisa was killed by another cacique because they felt that she betrayed their people by marrying a mulatto. The mulatto that she married was Pedro Mejias. Pedro Mejias was a free black man whose family was from, I think his family were Yoruba, and they were brought to Spain, and from Spain he came into Puerto Rico as a conquistador. So the Taino people viewed her marriage to Pedro Mejias as an insult to them, and so the legend says that some caciques rallied up and got her killed. Many people view her as a historical figure. They say that she had children with Pedro Mejias, who lived on. In fact, the African city in Puerto Rico, the very African dominant, Afro-Boricua dominant city of Luisa, which San Juan is up here in the northern part of the island. Then you go this way, there's Luisa Aldea. Luisa Aldea is named after this cacica, which to many she is viewed as a historical, important figure in the culture of what is Puerto Rico. So I just wanted to add that, to this video, just to add that to the video. So many slaves were brought to Puerto Rico, were brought to the Dominican Republic, and I think towards Virginia. That was a little bit more later. I can't talk about Virginian history. I don't know much about Virginian history, but I do know the history of the Caribbean. One thing that is important to know is that the Taino people were viewed as savages, and many had died out with diseases brought in by the European. They didn't have the immune system for the diseases that the Europeans had brought. It wasn't because of hand-to-hand battle. It was because of the diseases they had brought to Europe. That's why the Europeans had won, and almost destroyed the populations of the native Taino people of the Caribbean. But one thing is they also brought African slaves in Puerto Rico. The majority, there's slaves from every part of the western part of Africa in Puerto Rico. But the biggest African groups in Puerto Rico, we're talking about people from Benin, which is Dahomey. We're talking about people from Yoruba. Actually, the first man to step on Puerto Rican, the first African to step on Puerto Rican soil was a free man who was a conquistador, and he was a Yoruba. But there were Yoruba. There was people from Dahomey, present-day Dahomey, and people from Congolese. Congolese, those people were more in the northern parts of the island, while the Yoruba were more on the southern part of the island. When these Africans had children, these children, if they were of both African parents, these children were not seen, let's say, like humans. They were not seen as humans. They were seen as animal stock or property or whatever they were viewed as. But they weren't called. They had bad names. They were called oh my God, I'm going to forget the names. So these African children that were born in Puerto Rico, and I'm just going to say Puerto Rico because I don't know what they were called in the Dominican Republic or Haiti or Cuba, but in Puerto Rico they were known as sambos or cafusos. And then they were viewed as slaves, and many were kept, and some were sold to families in Puerto Rico or to other parts of the world. Like I said, El Negro Felipe was brought to Puerto Rico, and he was sent to Venezuela. So there's historical records on that. There was the sambos, the cafusos, there were los mulatos. Mulatto were of African and white mixture. Then there was the mestizos. The mestizos could have been of African and native Taino descent. And again, these people were still viewed as slaves. They were not pure white. Okay, so again, they could have been sold to other parts of Latin America and other parts of the United States. So I strayed away from is there hoodoo? Do Hispanics, do Puerto Rican people, Dominican people have influence on Southern American hoodoo? And I want to say no. I want to say no. We don't have any influence. But before I do go into that, I just want to mention back to when I said the first African man who came to Puerto Rico was a free man. Actually, he was a rich man. He was a conquistador, and he came to Puerto Rico with Juan Ponce de Leon. Juan Ponce de Leon was the first governor of Puerto Rico, and this conquistador of African birth, his name was Juan Garrido. Juan Garrido, that's his Christian name because he was baptized as a Christian in Spain. And he was known as Handsome John, Juan el Guapo. He's actually known as the first person to plant and grow wheat in the New World. So I'm just throwing a little bit of history out there. And I also mentioned the Sambos, los mulatos. We can't forget los cimarrones. Cimarrones were the African slaves who refused to be slaves. Many killed their masters. Many ran away and they hid in caves, whether in Puerto Rico, in Cuba. And they lived in small groups for their entire lives. They were actually never caught. In Puerto Rico, I mean, you can go to today, modern day, you can go to El Yunque, and you can literally get lost. In those days, the Spanish really didn't go into these tropical rainforests. The Africans, it was very similar to their climate in Africa. They understood these climates. They understood how to hide in caves. So many cimarrones, they got to live a long life within these caves or within these rainforests, and many cimarrones took on Native American Taino women as wives, just like the Spanish people before them. The Spanish people, the people from Spain did not bring women into Puerto Rico or Cuba or Santo Domingo until it was colonized. Women were not brought. It's not like in America where pilgrims brought wives. No, the Spanish didn't bring women. So sadly, they say they raped the Taino women, and the Taino women gave birth to the mestizos, and then many Taino women intermarried with Africans, and you got your mestizos, your mulattos, and that is what is Puerto Rico. It is a mixture, not just Puerto Rico, it is Puerto Rico, it is also Cuba, Santo Domingo, the Dominican Republic. If you look at the history of Louisiana, New Orleans, many of the slaves from New Orleans had French blood, had African blood, had a Native American mixed. So there is where we find the similarities between Puerto Rican Gafancia or Brujeria with Southern American Hoodoo. But to answer the question again, do Puerto Ricans and Dominican influence, or do we have an influence in American, Southern American Hoodoo? And I'm going to say no, we don't. But what we do share is a common root. We're not looking at the root. We're looking at the tree and we're looking at the branches, but we're not looking under the ground to see the roots of where both Southern American Hoodoo and Gafancia as practiced in Puerto Rico and Brujeria as practiced in Puerto Rico have a lot of similarities and a lot of roots that come from the same, well, it's the same tree, it's different branches. So as I have stated earlier, Hispanic Brujeria, we don't view it as a religion. We view it as a practice, as something that we do just in life, like cooking arroz con, making a pot of rice and beans or mopping the floor. It is an act. We don't view it, and I'm not disrespecting Wicca, we don't view it as, Wicca is a religion, an earth-based religion. People who practice Brujeria or Gafancia in the Caribbean, many of them are Catholics, some of them are Protestants, some of them practice maybe an African tradition, whether it's Ocha, Palo Mayombe, Lucumí, Espiritismo criollo, not all of them, but some of them. And so they separate it, la magia, su brujería, su gafancia. And then you have their religion. This is my religion, and this is who I do, and what I do as a practice. It's like a shoemaker, a person who makes shoes. That's not his religion. That is his practice. So that's how Brujeria and Gafancia is seen in Hispanic cultures. Origins of or similarities between Hoodoo, Southern American Hoodoo, and Hispanic Gafancia, the word. We got Gafancia. Gafancia is hoodoo, to place a Jinx. Él me gafió, me hizo un gafo. Me hizo un gafo means that person placed a Jinx on me. And that's where you get the word, or the similar to the origins of the word gopher in hoodoo, like gopher dust. And those two words, gafe or gafo or gafancia and gopher, have their origins in the Kikongo language of Congo, which is kufwa. And kufwa means to kill or to die, or to kill or to die using roots or using poisons, using the magical energies of a root, having knowledge of the magical roots, magical properties or poisonous properties of roots in order to kill, to maim, to control another person. And that's where we have the similarities between the origin of gopher and gafancia. Or gufear, no me gufee, esa persona me está gufeando. And that's pretty much the origin, there's, just like hoodoo is, just like Gafancia and Brujeria is not a religion for Hispanics, many people who practice hoodoo, I've noticed, are Catholics, some of them are Protestants, some of them might follow a European form of religious witchcraft tradition, I don't know. But they view it as, this is my religion and this is my practice. This is my spiritual faith, and this is something that I do as a magical practice to help me navigate my way through life as best as I can and as most comfortably as I can, using the arcane knowledge of these herbs, these roots, to influence things in my favor during my journey in life. I hope I made sense right there. Within the Caribbean, in the Caribbean islands, Puerto Rico is the third island that is most practiced. So there's an island that has more practice of brujeria, witchcraft. There's a second, Puerto Rico being the third. Now, Puerto Rico is predominantly a Catholic country. It is a very Catholic country. Then there's Pentecostalism, Protestantism, and traditions, religions like that. But also in Puerto Rico is a melting pot. You will find Santeria, you will find La Gaga, you will find Palo Mayombe, you will find Espiritismo, you will find El Voodoo in Puerto Rico, and you will find Hinduism, you'll find Judaism, you'll find just many different forms of religion. Puerto Rico is like the melting pot in the Caribbean. There's a lot of religions in that, just that little small island, but the predominant religions in Puerto Rico is Catholicism, Christianity, Pentecostalism, and then we have our African-based religions, a revival in the Taino Semism. Semism is the way of the Taino people is being revived within Puerto Rico. I just wanted to add this to the video. Also, I wanted to add that if you've ever been to Puerto Rico, there's 3 forts in Puerto Rico, but there's one in Old San Juan. And if you've been to Old San Juan, I want you to visualize this. There's the Park of the Totem, and then across the street from the Park of the Totem, where you'll see El Morro, El Castillo de San Felipe del Morro, which is a castle. But in front of the Castillo de San Felipe, there's a college or an institute of performing arts. I can't remember the name of that performing arts college. Historically, in the late 1400s, early 1500s, that was known as El Fanguito de las Brujas. Fanguito de las Brujas means the witch's mud grounds, or witch's muddy puddle. And it is proven fact that, historically, there's records on this of the first witch hangings and witch burnings that happened in the Americas, happened in Puerto Rico, there in that area which was called El Fanguito de las Brujas. Many of these people who were hung or burnt were of African origin. There are records of African women saying how the spirit within the stomach, and that's a different video altogether. It will take a long time to even explain that, but how spirits within because a lot of the Africans brought their spirits within their stomach, and so these people were burnt as witches. Native American women were burnt as witches, and even Catholic priests who were heretics because of practicing arcane forms of esoteric forms of religion, I guess, or magic, were caught and they were burnt and killed. So I just wanted to add that in front of El Morro, the Castillo del Morro de San Felipe in San Juan, which you'll see the castle right here, you'll see El Parque the Totem Park, beautiful park, and there's a college of performing and fine arts right there in that area where that college is. If you've ever go to Old San Juan, right there, that is where the first witch persecutions, burning, and hanging of the Spanish Inquisition was felt in the Americas, was right there in that area. It is historically proven and documented, even though, Puerto Rico tries to hide their history of brujeria, because Puerto Rico has a lot of history like every other Caribbean island, but that is the first place documented and recorded in the Americas of witch burnings and witch hangings in the Americas, and that place was called El Fanguito de las Brujas, and that is in Old San Juan. If you ever go to Old San Juan and you see El Morro, El Castillo del Morro, and you see that totem, it sprouts out water. It's a beautiful park. There's this building right here. I think it's yellow, if I can remember. It's a yellow building. It's a College of Performing Arts. That's the location where it was used to be called the Witch's Mud Puddle, El Fanguito de las Brujas. That's where women, usually African women, Native American people, and Catholic heretics were burnt, hung, or trialed as witches. And that was the first place it happened in the Americas. And I just wanted to add that to the video. This is a long video and I can keep going and on and on. It's a long history. So according to DNA that has been done throughout the island of Puerto Rico, 61% of Puerto Ricans have Amerindian or Taino DNA. That's 61% of Puerto Ricans have Native American DNA, which we're assuming is going to be Taino. I think it's 27% is of African DNA, and then there's 12% which is Caucasian DNA. This was a test that was done throughout the island. So there's a reason why I'm saying this. During the time of, and you gotta remember, when I'm saying 61%, I'm not meaning full-blooded Native American, because remember, I have Native American blood, Taino blood within my father's side. My mother's side is very European, Caucasian looking, very white, blonde hair, blue eyes, while my father's side, they're dark hair, beautiful dark skin, high cheekbones, Asiatic eyes, solo indio. And my mother's side, solo blanquito. So Puerto Rico has a mix of these people. Now, why am I bringing this up? The 27% of the Africans that were brought into Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, in the time of the colonization, it still is a colony. But let's say the colony of Spain, when it was a colony of Spain, yes, Puerto Rico is still a colony of the United States. But anyways, when Puerto Rico was a colony of España, Spain really brought a lot of the Spanish Inquisition all throughout the Caribbean, but it was very greatly felt in Puerto Rico. Unlike Cuba, where you see that a lot of African traditions exist. You see the palo, you see the santeria, and you do see that in Puerto Rico, but that was brought later. Sanse, el voodoo was brought later with the Haitian migration, the Cuban migration, the Dominican migrations into Puerto Rico. The 27% of the Africans that lived in Puerto Rico were not allowed to practice any African religion. They were only allowed to congregate to play music, and that's where, thankfully, they were allowed to play their African music, and that's where we get our bomba and our plena, our Puerto Rican Afro beats and our African music. But the Africans did not forget their religions. They intermingled their santos, the white man's santo. I got a piece of dog here. The white man's santo, the European santos, with their African deities, and then sooner or later it just became the santo. But if you look at a lot of the way the African traditions in Puerto Rico, they practice their Catholicism. One great one to mention is San Santiago, el Festival de San Santiago, which is celebrated in Luisa. A lot of that Catholic Santos influence is very African, and you can see elements of Chango, and you can see elements of Ogum in their fiestas. And when Santa Bárbara is called down into our fiestas, you can see her African or her Indian origins, her Native American origins within that. So Africans were not allowed to practice their own pure African religions, and they had to hide many of their deities, their orisha, the Tainos had to hide los semise within Catholic saints, and sooner or later the names began to be forgotten, the original names, but the essence, the energy of these spirits still existed within these santos. And thankfully, now they're coming back. Now you see Chango, you see Ataveira, you see Yucau, within our Espiritismo Criollo tradition, which is totally separate from Hoodoo, which is the origin of this video, and I know I'm all over the place. So I'm going to end this video with a couple of book recommendations. just that I think that people should read, and I'm just going to pause it for a second and show you the books. One of the prejudices that I get, especially from people who are not of Puerto Rican descent, they often, mostly Hispanics, they often say, pero nene, ven acá, ¿qué tú eres? ¿Tú eres brujo o tú eres espiritista? Which means, are you a witch or are you a spiritualist? I'm both. It's simple like that. In Puerto Rico, Espiritismo has many branches. We have Caldesianismo, which is more the European tradition. We have Espiritismo folclórico, Espiritismo criollo, Espiritismo de la Mesa Blanca, Espiritismo de la Caridad. There's many branches of Espiritismo. The Espiritismo that I've practiced is Mesa Blanca Criollo, Creolized Espiritismo, and it's an intermingling of European philosophies with African spirituality, with Taino, native Taino spirituality. I know many Puerto Ricans who are both witch doctors, witch healers, and espiritistas, and a lot of people say that can't exist. So I'm going to show you a few book recommendations that I, especially for if you're Puerto Rican, I think you should read, so you can understand who Sancista Brujo Luis is, and that I'm not the only one. And the first two books are by the same author, and I'm going to name my video of this after this title. It's called Healing Dramas. I don't know if you can see that title right there. Try not to get the blur, but it's Healing Dramas, Divination and Magic in Puerto Rico by Raquel Romberg. Now, this is not a spell book, this is more of a history, and she wrote two books on her study on Brujeria and Espiritismo as practiced in Puerto Rico. This one is more based on the life of Toño el Brujo. Let me see if I can find a picture of Toño el Brujo, which was el número uno brujo de Luisa, Puerto Rico. It's more like a history book, anthropology. Of course, I'm not going to find no pictures, but she interviewed Toño el Brujo for this book. I'm not going to get any pictures. Let me find a picture of Toño el Brujo for you, because there's a lot of pictures throughout the book. And again, it is titled Healing Dramas, Divination and Magic in Puerto Rico. This is not a 101 guide. This is more of a history, of a study of how Espiritismo and Brujeria is practiced in Puerto Rico. And when you get to read this book, I recommend this to all Puerto Rican people, but when you get to read this book, you understand who Sancista Brujo Luis is and my traditions from my culture, from my people. Let me find a picture of Toño el Brujo. Give me one moment. Alright, so I found some pictures of Toño el Brujo. I don't even know if you can see that. He's passed away since the publication of this book. Then her second book, well actually her first book, is about Heidi, La Bruja. Heidi was his goddaughter. She was his apprentice. And the book has a lot of pictures of just brujeria and espiritismo criollo as practiced in Puerto Rico, and how they go hand in hand, la mano izquierda y la mano derecha. Great book if you want to learn a little bit of history. It's more of a history book. This is not a 101. This is the life of un brujo and her Raquel Romberg's studies of brujeria as practiced in Puerto Rico. She also wrote Witchcraft and Welfare. I don't know if you can see that one. And this is the life of Heidi, La Bruja, also who passed away from a heart attack. She was an espiritista bruja, and the book has pictures, I don't know if you can see that, of how brujeria, it's an intermingling of what is our traditions, Espiritismo, La Brujeria, Catholicism. You'll see African elements, you'll see Taino elements within the book. Here's Heidi. dándose un tabaquito. May she rest in peace. May Toño el Brujo rest in peace. Both were espiritista brujos. Aquí ella está despojando, limpiando. There's a picture in here somewhere of her in I think una velada espiritual, which I'm not going to be able to find right now. But here's, you can see los Congo. I think you can see un indio there, I'm not sure, but you can see los Congo. You can see the spirits that she honored. This again is not a one-on-one guide. Here she is en la mesa blanca. Una mesa blanca espiritual. These two books, you get to read these if you're Puerto Rican and you want to know brujeria as practiced in Puerto Rico and how many brujos are espiritistas in Puerto Rico. I definitely recommend these two books. I tried to read this book. It's called Governing Spirits, Religion, Miracles, and Spectacles of Cuba and Puerto Rico. I didn't like it. I mean, I know some people will like it. I really didn't like it. Try it out. Maybe you'll like it. I don't know. One of the greatest curanderas in Puerto Rico, una yerbera in Puerto Rico, also published a couple of books in Spanish, but this is her English book, and it's Earth and Spirit. I don't know if you can see that. So it's Earth and Spirits, Medical Plants and Healing Lore of Puerto Rico. And this is una mapita of my Puerto Rico. She interviews some herbalists, healers, brujas throughout the island. She's well known. She does courses in Puerto Rico, close to the center of the island. She does still do courses on learning herbal lore in Puerto Rico. Here she is interviewing a spiritual healer of Luisa. So these are just personal stories of brujas, espiritistas, curanderos, yerberos of the island of Puerto Rico. And if you're Puerto Rican and you want to learn a little bit of your history, some of these recipes are really just plain simple, but it is what it is. It is part of our curanderismo as practiced in Puerto Rico. I'm trying to find more pictures for you. The book has a bunch of pictures here. So if you want to learn about that, I definitely recommend Earth and Spirit by Maria Benedita, I think her name is. Definitely, if you want to get to know who Sancista Brujo Luis is, Witchcraft and Welfare. This is not something that I invented. This is something that's part of the Puerto Rican culture, the Puerto Rican experience, the Puerto Rican heritage. It's interesting to me that you can accept an espiritista that is a palero. You can accept an espiritista that is a santero, but you can't accept an espiritista that's a brujo, that's a witch doctor or a witch spiritual healer. That makes no sense to me, but to the Puerto Rican people, it makes sense. It goes hand in hand. So this video was about, I'm going to end this video because it's pretty long right now, but the video originally was about hoodoo. And so I want to recommend some books by Star Casas, which has nothing to do with Puerto Rican philosophies or traditions. This is more hoodoo. Hoodoo as practiced in the southern states of the United States. The Conjure workbook. I love this book. This is a good book. I like it because it's chock full of pictures. Now, they use a lot of the similar saints that we do in Hispanic traditions, but they use them a little bit different. Okay, so she does talk about San Elias, which we in Puerto Rico, we use him as el varón del cementerio. She talks about Santa Bárbara. She talks about Carilla, which is more of a Santeria tradition, and how they, this has to do with more Cuban Santeria and how they use it in their traditions. It's a really good book. I recommend all her books. I contacted her, and she sent me a book, and I'll show you that book and to end this video. But I definitely recommend this book. It's not a bad book. I actually liked it. Very simple to read. chock full of pictures about saints, how she uses it, and I see the similarities in how hoodoo is with Brujeria or Gafancia in Puerto Rico. Let me show you a book, because I'm like all over the place. Because that's one book that I definitely recommend. I got 3 of her books. The next book is Old Style Conjurer, also by Style Conjurer. This one is altars in hoodoo. She answers questions about some of the historical figures in hoodoo. She gets interviewed. Bible, how she uses the Bible in some of her hoodoo practices. Again, I like her book. They're very simple to read. A little bit different than how I practice, but I do see a lot of the similarities, and I love to learn, and I just like to read books. So I contacted her. I said I liked these 2 books that she put out. Has nothing to do with Puerto Rican Brujeria or Gafancia or Gaga or Voodoo, but this is the way Gafancia, la Gafancia or Hoodoo is practiced in the southern states of the New World. And she said, you know what, let me send you one of my books that I wrote, and I can't even find this online. I've looked for it, but this is her. It's like, you know, herbs and all that and what they're good for. It's called The Old Style Conjurer's Roots, Herbs, and More by Mama Star. I like the backing of the book. Thank you. She sent this to me. I read them. I gobbled it up. I keep this in my pantry, you know, with all my herbs and all that, because, you know, all this, not everything sticks in my brain, especially as I'm getting older. But I do see a lot of the similarities between Southern American hoodoo. A lot of differences, but a lot of similarities on how they might use the saints the way we used Los Santos in Puerto Rico. And she talks about St. John. She talks about San Elia, which we call Barón del Cementerio. She talks about San Miguel. She talks about just a whole bunch of santos, and she's got floor washes in here. She's got incenses in here. She's got a formulary in here. There's a whole bunch of prayers in here. I like books with pictures. There's a picture in here somewhere that I liked. But yeah, this is more hoodoo, and so I really recommend it. I just wanted to say a shout out to Mama Star Cassis, or Cass. Sorry if I said that wrong. I think this is an altar to Santa Marta, la Dominadora, and how she incorporates her in her practice of hoodoo. Okay, well, anyways, this is Sancista Brujo Luis. This video is probably long enough. I'm going to end it because I'm sure I've bored half of you guys half to death already. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button, share my videos in your favorite social media. If you know people that might like the channel, recommend the channel. I try to comment to, you know, all my comments. So please, I hope you enjoy it. If I'm not back before the holidays, happy holidays. I should be back, but happy holidays just in case I'm not. This is Sancista Brujo Luis, con mucho respeto, mucho amor, para todo mi público latinoamericano, to all my Latin Americans, to all my brothers and sisters in the Americas, to my people from Europe, from my people to Asia, from my people to Arabia, to my people down under in Australia. Thank you. I'm thinking about you, Sancista Brujo Luis. Thank you for all the outpour and all the love. I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, and I do my best to educate and entertain you the best that I can for the half hour I give you each week. Sancista Brujo Luis. Happy holidays if I'm not back. Santo Sanse.